Beneath the glamour of a high-end fashion boutique, trouble is brewing. Madison Pierce, the queen of the social scene, is used to getting whatever she wants, until she has a terrible run-in with an employee at Essence, the newest fashion store in town. Madison embarrasses Aisha Green, someone she thinks is just a regular worker, but she doesn't know one important thing. Aisha is actually the store's owner. When Madison finds out the truth, she feels humiliated in front of her fancy friends. She becomes obsessed with ruining Aisha and destroying Essence. But Aisha won't be brought down so easily. Can Aisha defend herself and her store against the discrimination and abuse? Before we dive into this incredible story, comment below where you're watching from today, and don't forget to subscribe if you enjoy the story. Now let's get started. The sun was shining brightly through the tall windows of Essence, filling the boutique with warm light. The store was filled with colorful clothes and stylish accessories, neatly arranged to catch the eyes of anyone who walked in. Aisha Green, the owner of this lovely boutique, was busy helping customers find the perfect outfit. She was always excited to meet new people and help them look their best. Today was a busy day at Essence. Aisha had just helped a group of young women pick out beautiful dresses and accessories for a special event. They were excited and happy, and Aisha felt great seeing them leave with big smiles and shopping bags full of their new finds. Just then, the bell above the boutique's door jingled, signaling that a new customer had arrived. Aisha looked up and saw a tall woman walking in. The woman had blonde hair and was dressed in an expensive-looking suit. Her high heels clicked loudly on the floor, and she had an air of confidence that seemed to demand attention. Aisha greeted her with a friendly smile, ready to assist. "Welcome to Essence. I'm Aisha. Is there anything I can help you find today?" Aisha asked, trying to sound as welcoming as possible. The woman glanced at Aisha briefly and then looked around the store with an indifferent expression. "I'm just looking around," she said, her voice cold and dismissive. "I didn't expect a boutique like this to be in this part of town." Aisha's smile wavered for a moment. The woman's comment seemed to suggest that she thought the store's location wasn't good enough. Aisha took a deep breath to stay calm and professional. "We're proud of our location," Aisha replied with a polite smile. "We offer a variety of fashion items to suit different tastes." The woman's eyes moved slowly over the racks of clothing, as if she was judging everything she saw. "I see. Though some of these clothes look a bit unusual, you might want to think about changing your selection if you want to attract more customers." Aisha felt a sting of frustration. The woman's comments were vague but clearly meant to criticize the store. Still, Aisha tried to keep her tone friendly. "Our collection is carefully chosen to offer something unique and special," Aisha said. "We believe in our fashion choices and hope our customers do too." The woman gave a thin smile that seemed more mocking than genuine. "How interesting. I'm sure you have a plan for all this." As she continued to browse, the woman's attitude became even more critical. She picked up a few items but commented on them with an air of superiority. "These pieces might appeal to some people, but they're not really my style. I guess everyone has different tastes." Aisha watched as the woman seemed to pass judgment on everything in the store. It was clear that she wasn't really interested in buying anything. She was more interested in making Aisha and the store feel small. Madison Pierce, the woman's name, kept up her snide remarks as she looked around. "I've heard there are other boutiques in the area that cater to a more refined clientele. It's tough to compete with them, isn't it?" Aisha's face tightened with frustration, but she managed to stay polite. "We focus on offering unique items that you won't find in other stores. We believe in our vision and our quality." Madison gave a smirk, clearly amused by Aisha's confidence. "Well, good luck with that. I'm sure you'll figure things out eventually." With that, Madison turned on her heel and walked out of the boutique, her high heels clicking loudly as she left. Aisha felt a wave of frustration wash over her. It wasn't just the critical comments. It was the way Madison had acted, as though she was somehow doing Aisha a favor by even stepping into the store. Lydia, Aisha's assistant, had been observing the entire encounter. She came over with a concerned look on her face. "What was that all about?" she asked. Aisha sighed deeply. "Just another customer who thinks she's better than everyone else. She was trying to make us feel inferior. Lydia's eyes narrowed. Madison Pierce is known for being arrogant and difficult. She likes to put others down and make herself look better. Aisha nodded, feeling the weight of Lydia's words. I know, it's just frustrating to deal with people like her. But remember, we have something special here, Lydia said firmly. We have our own style and our own vision. We're not going to let someone like her bring us down. Aisha appreciated Lydia's support. The day had started off so well, but Madison's visit had put a damper on things. The boutique had been doing great, but now it felt like a challenge was looming over them. As the day continued, Aisha tried to focus on the positive interactions she had with other customers. But each time the door chimed, she couldn't help but wonder if Madison would come back with more criticisms. It wasn't just the negative comments that bothered her. It was the way Madison had tried to belittle everything Aisha had worked so hard to build. By the time the boutique was ready to close, Aisha was feeling drained. She and Lydia began to tidy up, and Aisha found herself venting about the frustrating day. It's not just about what she said, Aisha explained. It's the way she acted like she was doing us a favor. It's like she thinks she's above everyone else. Lydia nodded in understanding. People like that think they're better than others because of their status or money. But we know our worth, and we know what we're doing here. Aisha smiled weakly. You're right, we'll keep doing what we do best, and let our work speak for itself. As they finished up and prepared for the next day, Aisha couldn't shake the feeling that Madison's visit had only been the beginning of the challenges ahead. Dealing with prejudice and condescension was tough, but Aisha was determined to face it head-on. Madison Pierce's irritation over her visit to Essence hadn't faded. If anything, it had grown. She had always prided herself on her sharp taste and her influence on the local social scene. The boutique's audacity to challenge her perception of high fashion was unacceptable. The fact that Aisha, whom Madison had dismissed as just another employee, was actually the owner made the slight feel even more personal. The next day, Madison convened with her close circle of friends at a chic cafe known for its high-profile clientele and elegant decor. Over their lattes and croissants, she recounted her visit to Essence with exaggerated disdain. You wouldn't believe the nerve of that boutique, Madison said, rolling her eyes dramatically. I walked in, and it was like stepping into some bizarre alternative reality. The clothes were so off, and the owner, well, let's just say she's not exactly what I'd call refined. Her friends, a group of well-dressed, affluent women, leaned in, intrigued. They had always admired Madison's ability to spot trends and critique them with flair. Today was no exception. Really? One of them, Claire, asked with a raised eyebrow. What did she do? Madison smirked. Oh, she tried to act all high and mighty, but it was clear she didn't have a clue. I mean, she was so insistent about the uniqueness of her clothes. As if anyone would actually wear that stuff. The group chuckled, enjoying the drama of Madison's retelling. But beneath the surface, Madison's mind was working on a plan. If Essence's poor taste in fashion was an affront to her sense of style, then surely she could make the boutique's inadequacies known. A little push in the right direction, and she could make sure Essence became the talk of the town, not for its fashion, but for its failure. I'm telling you, Madison continued, her voice low and conspiratorial. I think it's time someone showed them what real fashion looks like. Maybe if people knew what a joke their boutique is, they'd be inclined to shop elsewhere. Her friends nodded in agreement, some suggesting she use her social media influence to highlight the boutique's flaws in a subtle yet damaging way. Madison's eyes gleamed with the possibility. It was the perfect opportunity to make her mark and get back at Aisha for daring to make her feel small. Over the next few days, Madison's plan began to take shape. She posted a series of thinly veiled critiques on her popular social media accounts. She shared photos of herself in high-end designer outfits with captions comparing her look to something that might have come out of a less discerning boutique. The posts were crafted to make Essence's clothes seem out of place and out of touch. Isn't it fascinating how some places claim to be unique when they're really just outdated? Madison posted one day, "Sometimes it's better to stick with what you know works." The comments were designed to appear casual, but the underlying message was clear. Madison's followers, who respected her opinion on fashion, began to question Essence's credibility. The boutique's social media accounts saw a sudden spike in negative comments and dismissive reviews. Aisha noticed the shift immediately. The boutique's phone began ringing with inquiries from concerned customers, and the store's online reviews took a dive. It was clear that Madison's campaign was having an impact. Aisha tried to stay optimistic, focusing on the loyal customers who continued to support Essence. But each new complaint or negative review was a reminder of the battle she was facing. Lydia worked tirelessly to address the issues, responding to reviews and reassuring customers, but the damage was already being done. One afternoon, as Aisha was working on restocking the shelves, a familiar face appeared in the doorway. It was Madison, looking as poised and self-satisfied as ever. "Back again?" Aisha asked, trying to mask her frustration with a polite smile. Madison gave a casual shrug. "Just checking in to see how things are going. I've heard some interesting things about the store recently." Aisha's heart sank. She knew that Madison's visit was no coincidence. "Well, we're doing our best to address any concerns our customers have. We believe in the quality of our products and our service." Madison's eyes gleamed with a hint of malice. "I'm sure you're working hard, but sometimes, no matter how hard you try, things just don't work out. I guess that's the nature of business." With that, Madison turned and walked out, leaving Aisha feeling deflated. She knew Madison's visit was meant to taunt her, to remind her of the damage already done. Later that evening, as Aisha and Lydia were closing up the store, they discussed their options. "I don't understand why she's doing this," Aisha said, frustration evident in her voice. "We've always tried to run an honest business and provide great service." Lydia looked thoughtful. "People like Madison think they're untouchable. They use their influence to push others down, but that doesn't mean we have to give in." Aisha nodded, feeling a renewed sense of determination. "We're not going to let her sabotage our hard work. We need to keep doing what we do best and find ways to rebuild our reputation." The next day, Aisha decided to take action. She reached out to local fashion bloggers and influencers who had been supportive of Essence in the past. She invited them to the boutique for a special event showcasing new arrivals and offering exclusive discounts. Aisha hoped that by directly engaging with her loyal customers and the local fashion community, she could counteract the negative publicity and remind people of what made Essence special. The event was a success. The boutique was filled with positive energy, and many attendees left with new outfits and a renewed appreciation for Essence. The support from the local fashion community helped counterbalance the negative impact of Madison's campaign. As the weeks went by, Aisha continued to focus on maintaining the high standards of her boutique. She refused to let Madison's schemes undermine her confidence or her vision. Despite the ongoing challenges, Aisha was determined to show that Essence was more than just a boutique. It was a place of creativity, quality, and community. But Madison wasn't finished. She continued her subtle attacks, always looking for new ways to undermine Aisha's success. The tension between them grew as Madison became increasingly obsessed with proving that Essence was a failure. The battle was far from over. Aisha knew that every day brought new challenges, but she was resolved to face them with grace and perseverance. She was determined to protect her business and show that Essence was not just a store. It was a testament to her hard work, passion, and resilience. As the story unfolded, Aisha and Madison's conflict became a dramatic struggle for dominance, with each side fighting to prove their worth. The suspense and tension continued to build, with Madison's schemes pushing the limits, and Aisha's determination to overcome them, driving the narrative forward. The days following the successful event at Essence were a mix of relief and optimism for Aisha. While the boutique's reputation had begun to recover, she knew that Madison's vendetta wasn't over. Madison was relentless, and her influence was widespread. The latest attack came through a local fashion magazine known for its biting critiques and loyal following. One morning, Aisha was sipping her coffee when Lydia burst into the office with a copy of the magazine. Her face was a mixture of concern and disbelief. "Have you seen this?" Lydia asked, thrusting the magazine towards Aisha. Aisha took the magazine and flipped through it until she found the fashion review section. Her eyes widened as she read the harsh critique of Essence. The review was scathing, with comments about the boutique's lackluster designs and uninspired selection. The writer, a prominent fashion critic, had clearly been influenced by Madison's ongoing campaign. "This is brutal," Aisha said, her voice tight with frustration. "It's like they're attacking everything we've worked for." Lydia nodded. "It's clear Madison's behind this. She's probably feeding information to these critics or even writing the reviews herself." Aisha took a deep breath, trying to steady her emotions. "We need to respond. We can't let this go unanswered," Lydia agreed. "Let's arrange a press event. We can invite local media and fashion influencers to see the boutique firsthand. Show them what Essence is really about." With a renewed sense of determination, Aisha began planning the event. She wanted to demonstrate that Essence was more than just a target for Madison's disdain. It was a thriving hub of creativity and style. Meanwhile, Madison was basking in her apparent success. She had been monitoring the fallout from the magazine review with satisfaction, but she wasn't about to rest on her laurels. In her mind, the next step was to escalate the situation further. She was already scheming her next move. As the date for Aisha's press event approached, Madison found out about it through her network of contacts. Her immediate reaction was to plan a counterattack. She decided to host a rival event at a nearby high-end venue, showcasing her own taste and the supposed failings of Essence. The day of the press event arrived. The boutique was bustling with excitement and anticipation. Aisha had worked tirelessly to ensure everything was perfect. The space was adorned with elegant decorations, and the new collection was beautifully displayed. Local media, fashion bloggers, and influencers arrived, eager to see what Essence had to offer. Aisha greeted each guest with warmth and professionalism, determined to make a strong impression. The atmosphere was positive, and many of the attendees were impressed by the boutique's unique selection and the personal touch Aisha brought to her business. But just as the event was reaching its peak, Lydia's phone buzzed with a notification. She glanced at it, and her eyes widened in alarm. "Madison's holding her own event right now," Lydia said, showing Aisha a social media post announcing the rival event. "And it's getting a lot of attention." Aisha's heart sank. She had anticipated that Madison would respond, but the timing was particularly disruptive. Madison's event was being covered live on social media, with snapshots of glamorous decor and supposedly high-profile guests. It was clear that Madison was trying to overshadow Essence's success. The tension in the room was palpable as Aisha tried to focus on the event at hand. She gave an impassioned speech about the values and vision of Essence, hoping to steer the narrative back to the positive aspects of her boutique. "Essence is more than just a store," Aisha said, her voice steady. "It's a place where creativity thrives and every piece tells a story. We believe in celebrating individuality and style." The audience responded positively, and the event continued smoothly despite the competition. Aisha was relieved to see that the attendees appreciated the boutique's efforts and left with a renewed sense of admiration. However, the fallout from Madison's event was immediate. The next day, social media was abuzz with comparisons between the two events. Madison's event had been heavily promoted, and it appeared that her influence was still strong. Some attendees praised her for her taste and style, while others commented on the ongoing feud between her and Aisha. The media coverage was divided, with some outlets favoring Madison's high-profile approach and others defending Essence's authenticity and dedication. The situation was becoming increasingly polarized, and it was clear that the battle between Madison and Aisha was far from over. Aisha knew she needed to stay focused. She continued to engage with her customers and build relationships within the fashion community. Despite the mounting pressure, she refused to let Madison's antics dictate her actions. But Madison was relentless. She continued to push her narrative through social media and local gossip. Her influence was powerful, and it was clear that she wouldn't rest until she had completely discredited Essence. As the weeks went by, the tension between the two women reached a boiling point. Madison's tactics were growing more aggressive, and Aisha was determined to stand her ground. The conflict was becoming a public spectacle, with every move scrutinized and every word dissected by the media and the fashion community. The drama was palpable, and the stakes were higher than ever. Both women were fighting for their reputations and their businesses, and the outcome of their struggle remained uncertain. In the midst of the chaos, Aisha remained resolute. She continued to focus on her boutique and her customers, determined to prove that Essence was more than just a pawn in Madison's game. The battle between Madison and Aisha was far from over, and the suspense and tension continued to build. Each chapter of their conflict brought new challenges and new opportunities, keeping everyone on the edge of their seats and eager to see what would happen next. As the feud between Madison and Aisha grew more intense, both women were finding new ways to challenge each other. Madison's tactics were becoming increasingly ruthless, and Aisha was determined not to let her rival's underhanded schemes derail her success. One crisp autumn morning, Aisha was busy preparing for the boutique's annual fall sale. The event was crucial for boosting sales and maintaining customer loyalty. She had planned special discounts, exclusive items, and a small fashion show to attract customers. Lydia was busy coordinating the final details when the boutique's phone rang. Aisha answered, her heart sinking as she recognized the caller's voice. It was Tara, a loyal customer who was known for her impeccable taste and social media influence. "Aisha, I've got something you need to see," Tara said, her voice tinged with concern. "I just received an email that seems a bit strange. It's from someone claiming to be from Essence, offering huge discounts on our fall sale items. The email looks really convincing, but it's not from your usual address." Aisha's heart raced. This was clearly an attempt at sabotage. Madison had been known to employ underhanded tactics, and this was exactly the kind of dirty trick she would use to undermine Essence's event. "I'll look into it right away," Aisha said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Thank you for letting me know." After hanging up, Aisha turned to Lydia with a worried expression. "We've got a problem. Someone's trying to sabotage our fall sale by sending out fake discount offers. We need to act quickly to prevent any damage." Lydia's face hardened with determination. "Let's inform our customers immediately and make sure they know what's real and what's fake. We also need to check our email security and make sure this doesn't happen again." Aisha and Lydia worked swiftly to counter the sabotage. They sent out a mass email to their customer list, clarifying the legitimate details of the sale and warning them about the fraudulent offers. They also posted updates on their social media channels to ensure that their loyal customers were informed. Despite their efforts, the damage had already been done. Some customers had been tricked by the fake offers, and the boutique's phone lines were flooded with inquiries and complaints. Aisha and Lydia spent the entire day dealing with the fallout, trying to reassure their customers and maintain their trust. As the day wore on, Aisha's frustration grew. Madison's tactics were becoming increasingly personal, and it was clear that she was willing to do whatever it took to bring Essence down. Aisha's determination to succeed was stronger than ever, but the constant pressure was taking its toll. Meanwhile, Madison was reveling in her apparent success. She had heard about the chaos at Essence and was already plotting her next move. Her influence and resources allowed her to stay one step ahead of Aisha, and she was determined to use every advantage to win. Madison's latest scheme involved a series of anonymous online reviews that praised her boutique while criticizing Essence. The reviews were carefully crafted to sound authentic, but they were clearly part of Madison's ongoing campaign to discredit her rival. Aisha was aware of Madison's tactics, but she refused to let them distract her. She continued to focus on improving the boutique's operations and maintaining her customer relationships. She knew that the key to overcoming Madison's schemes was to stay true to her vision and provide exceptional service. Despite her efforts, the tension between Madison and Aisha was palpable. The media coverage continued to fuel the rivalry, with each new development adding to the drama. The fashion community was divided, and the feud was becoming a spectacle that everyone was eager to follow. As the fall sale approached, Aisha hoped that the worst of the sabotage was behind her. She was determined to make the event a success and prove that Essence was more than just a target for Madison's attacks. On the day of the sale, the boutique was filled with excited customers. Aisha and Lydia worked tirelessly to ensure that everything went smoothly, from managing the sales floor to coordinating the fashion show. The event was a success, and many customers praised the boutique for its quality and service. But as the day came to a close, Aisha received another unsettling call. It was Tara again, with more troubling news. "Aisha, I've just seen something online that you need to know about," Tara said. "There's a new post from Madison's boutique claiming that Essence's fall sale was a failure and that the store is struggling. It's clearly meant to undermine your success." Aisha's heart sank. Madison was continuing her campaign of deception and sabotage, and it was clear that she wouldn't stop until she had completely discredited Essence. "This has to end," Aisha said, her voice resolute. "We need to confront this head-on and show everyone that we're not going to be intimidated." Lydia agreed. "We'll continue to focus on our strengths and prove that Essence is a valuable part of the community. We'll let our work speak for itself." As the rivalry continued, the stakes were higher than ever. Both women were fighting for their reputations and their businesses, and the outcome of their struggle remained uncertain. The drama and tension were palpable, and the conflict was far from over. The battle between Madison and Aisha had reached a critical point, and the next moves would determine the future of their rivalry. Each chapter of their conflict brought new challenges and new opportunities, keeping everyone on edge and eager to see what would happen next. The rivalry between Madison and Aisha had reached fever pitch. Every move Aisha made seemed to spark a new wave of sabotage from Madison, who had fully committed to tearing down Essence at any cost. As the fall season progressed, the tension in their community was almost tangible, with whispers and gossip floating through the fashion circles about the feud. But while Madison thrived on chaos, Aisha found solace in her unwavering belief that integrity and hard work would always prevail. It was a conviction that kept her going, even when her energy and patience were running thin. Essence was bustling one cool afternoon as the last few customers of the day browsed the boutique's new winter collection. Aisha was behind the counter, taking a rare moment to catch her breath. Lydia sat at the small table in the back, sorting through inventory records, while the sunlight outside began to fade into the early twilight. "I can't believe how far this has gone," Lydia murmured, looking up from her work. "Every time I think Madison can't stoop any lower, she finds a way." Aisha sighed, glancing out the window at the busy street. "I know, it's exhausting, but if we let her get to us, we're letting her win. I just don't understand why she's so obsessed with ruining us," Lydia continued, shaking her head in frustration. "It's like she has nothing better to do than try to make our lives miserable." Aisha paused, considering her words. There was a time when she might have shared Lydia's confusion, but now she understood Madison's motives all too well. It wasn't just about business, it was personal. Madison had been embarrassed, publicly humiliated, in fact, when she discovered that Aisha wasn't just another employee, but the owner of the very store she had tried to belittle. That kind of blow to her ego had festered, turning into something ugly. Madison couldn't let it go, and so she sought revenge. "People like Madison thrive on control," Aisha said finally. "She feels threatened because she can't control me, and she can't control Essence, so she's trying to destroy us instead." Lydia leaned back in her chair, frowning. "But it's not just that, is it? I mean, it's also because you're, Aisha nodded. "Yes, it's also because I'm a black woman who owns a successful business, and she can't handle that. She expected me to be beneath her, and when I wasn't, it shook her." Before Lydia could respond, the boutique door chimed, and in walked a group of women Aisha instantly recognized. Madison's inner circle, the same clique that had laughed along with her when Madison belittled Aisha on that fateful day. They looked around the store with raised brows, clearly unimpressed. "Oh, look who it is," one of them whispered, loud enough for both Aisha and Lydia to hear. "The famous Essence." The women strutted over to a rack of dresses, deliberately speaking in hushed tones that were still just loud enough to be heard. "Isn't this the store that's been struggling?" one of them asked with faux concern, running her fingers over a sequin dress. "I heard they had to give away half their inventory to get people to come to the sale." Aisha clenched her jaw, but she refused to take the bait. She had dealt with worse than petty gossip, and she wasn't going to let these women rattle her. "I don't know what people see in this place," another one muttered. "I mean, it's nice enough, but it's not Madison's. There's no class, no prestige." Lydia shot Aisha a look, silently asking if they should say something, but Aisha shook her head. She knew better than to engage. That's exactly what Madison wanted, for Aisha to lose her composure and lash out, proving that she wasn't as graceful as she appeared. Instead, Aisha stepped forward with a calm smile, her voice steady and professional. "Is there anything I can help you ladies with today? We've just received our winter collection, and I'd be happy to assist you with any questions." The women exchanged smug glances before one of them waved a hand dismissively. "Oh no, we're just browsing. We prefer to shop somewhere else, where the service is a bit more upscale." Aisha's smile never faltered. "I see. Well, feel free to take your time. We pride ourselves on providing quality service to all of our customers." The words were polite, but the underlying message was clear. "You're not going to intimidate me." The women lingered for a few more minutes, whispering and laughing amongst themselves before finally leaving in a huff. Once the door closed behind them, Lydia let out an exasperated sigh. "They didn't even try to hide it," she said, shaking her head. "They were sent here to stir up trouble, plain and simple." Aisha nodded. "It's Madison's way of sending a message. She's trying to remind us that she has influence in this town." "But we're not going to let her get to us, right?" Lydia asked, her tone a mix of frustration and determination. "No," Aisha said firmly. "We're not. If we stay focused and keep doing what we're doing, people will see the truth. Madison can spread all the rumors and lies she wants, but at the end of the day, essence speaks for itself." Despite Aisha's confidence, the pressure of Madison's constant sabotage weighed heavily on her. There were moments, late at night when the boutique was empty and the lights were off, where doubt crept in. What if Madison succeeded in turning the community against her? What if Essence couldn't survive the onslaught? But Aisha pushed those thoughts aside. She had built this business from the ground up, and she wasn't about to let Madison tear it down. Not without a fight. A few days later, the tension came to a head. Essence was hosting a special trunk show, featuring an exclusive line from a new designer that Aisha had been excited to collaborate with. The event had been advertised for weeks, and the turnout was expected to be huge. As the day of the event approached, everything seemed to be going smoothly. The boutique was fully stocked, the designer's pieces had arrived on time, and the guest list was filled with loyal customers and influencers who were eager to attend. But on the morning of the show, disaster struck. When Aisha arrived at the boutique to finalize the setup, she found the front door wide open and the store in complete disarray. Racks of clothing had been overturned, display tables had been knocked over, and several of the designer's pieces were missing. Lydia, who had arrived just moments after Aisha, stood frozen in shock. What happened?" Aisha's heart pounded in her chest as she surveyed the damage. This was no accident. Someone had broken in and deliberately sabotaged the store, and she didn't have to guess who was behind it. "It's Madison," Aisha said through gritted teeth. "She's trying to ruin the trunk show." Lydia's eyes widened. "Are you sure? I mean, this is extreme, even for her." Aisha nodded. "I'm sure. This is exactly the kind of stunt she would pull." With only a few hours until the event, Aisha and Lydia worked frantically to clean up the mess. They called the police to report the break-in, but Aisha knew that even if Madison was responsible, it would be nearly impossible to prove. As they scrambled to restore order, Aisha's resolve only grew stronger. Madison might have thrown another obstacle in her path, but she wasn't going to let it stop her. The trunk show would go on as planned, and Essence would rise above the sabotage. The trunk show was set to start in an hour, and the boutique was finally back in order. Aisha and Lydia had worked tirelessly to fix the mess left behind by Madison's sabotage, and though the damage had been extensive, the boutique now looked as pristine as ever. Aisha stood in front of a mirror, straightening the collar of her tailored dress, her hands trembling slightly from the adrenaline still coursing through her. Despite everything, she remained determined to make the event a success. Lydia came up behind her, brushing a few strands of hair out of her face. "It looks perfect, Aisha. No one will ever know what happened." Aisha smiled, though her eyes were still clouded with concern. I hope so. We've put too much work into this for it to fall apart now. Lydia hesitated before speaking again. Do you think she'll show up? Aisha didn't have to ask who Lydia meant. Madison had a way of always being present during important moments, ready to swoop in and add salt to the wound. Aisha considered the question, feeling the weight of it. She might, Aisha admitted, her voice steady. But if she does, I'll be ready. As the minutes ticked by, the boutique began to fill with guests. Customers, influencers, and local designers arrived, admiring the winter collection and mingling amongst themselves. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement, and for a moment, Aisha allowed herself to believe that everything would go according to plan. The trunk show began smoothly. The designers' pieces were a hit, with several guests commenting on the unique styles and intricate detailing. Aisha moved through the crowd with ease, greeting guests and answering questions, her smile never faltering. She was in her element, and despite the earlier chaos, the event seemed to be a success. But as the evening wore on, Aisha's intuition kicked in. She could feel a shift in the air, a subtle change that made the hairs on the back of her neck stand on end. And then she saw her. Madison, flanked by her usual group of friends, strutting into the boutique like she owned the place. Madison's eyes scanned the room, her lips curling into a smirk as she took in the scene. She was dressed impeccably, as always, in a designer gown that seemed deliberately chosen to outshine the pieces on display. Her friends followed behind her, their expressions smug and condescending as they whispered to each other. Aisha felt her stomach tighten, but she refused to let Madison's presence ruin the night. She had anticipated this. Madison thrived on drama and attention, and Aisha wasn't about to give her the satisfaction of a reaction. Madison sauntered over to the display of designer pieces, her fingers casually brushing over the fabric as if she were inspecting the goods. "Interesting selection," she said loudly, her voice dripping with sarcasm, "though I'm not sure it's up to par with the fashion shows I usually attend." A few of her friends giggled behind her, glancing around to see if anyone else had heard the remark. Aisha approached, her posture poised and graceful. "I'm glad you could make it, Madison," she said calmly, her tone polite but firm. "We're thrilled with the turnout tonight." Madison turned to face her, her smile sharp and predatory. "Oh, I'm sure you are. After all, a little boutique like this needs all the help it can get, doesn't it?" Aisha's expression didn't waver. Essence has always prided itself on quality and community. We don't need to rely on anyone else's reputation to succeed. Madison raised an eyebrow, her smile never reaching her eyes. "Is that so? Because from what I hear, your little trunk show almost didn't happen." Aisha's heart skipped a beat, but she kept her composure. "Sabotage and rumors can only do so much damage, Madison. The truth always comes out in the end." Madison's smirk deepened, but before she could respond, one of the designers approached, oblivious to the tension. "Aisha, we've just sold 5 of the limited edition dresses. This event is incredible." Aisha smiled warmly at the designer. "That's wonderful news. I'm so glad the collection is resonating with everyone." The designer beamed and hurried off to attend to more customers, leaving Aisha and Madison standing alone once again. Madison's smile faltered for a split second, and Aisha saw it, a crack in the carefully crafted facade. Madison had come here expecting to witness failure, but instead she was seeing success. And that realization was eating at her. "You think this is over?" Madison said in a low voice, stepping closer to Aisha. "You think one successful event means you've won? You have no idea who you're dealing with." Aisha met Madison's gaze, her own eyes steely with resolve. "I know exactly who I'm dealing with, and I also know that I'm not afraid of you." Madison's eyes flickered with anger, but she quickly masked it with a cold smile. "We'll see about that." With that, she turned and sauntered away, her friends trailing behind her like loyal subjects. Aisha watched her go, feeling a mixture of relief and frustration. Madison wasn't going to stop, that much was clear. But Aisha wasn't going to let her win. Not now, not ever. The rest of the evening went off without a hitch. The trunk show was a resounding success, with nearly all of the designer's pieces sold by the end of the night. As the last of the guests trickled out, Aisha and Lydia stood in the now empty boutique, exhausted but triumphant. "You did it," Lydia said with a tired smile. Despite everything, you pulled it off. Aisha exhaled, finally allowing herself to relax. We did it, she corrected, giving Lydia a grateful look. I couldn't have done it without you. Lydia waved her hand dismissively. Please, you're the one who kept it all together. I would have lost it halfway through. Aisha chuckled softly, though the weight of Madison's threat still lingered in her mind. I don't think this is over, she admitted, her voice quieter now. Madison's not going to let this go. Lydia's expression darkened. I know, but we'll deal with her. She's not invincible, Aisha. She may think she's untouchable, but the truth always comes out. Aisha nodded, though deep down she knew that Madison wasn't going to play fair. The next move in their silent war was coming, and Aisha had to be ready. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. Despite the sabotage, the trunk show had brought in a surge of new customers, and Essence was busier than ever. The boutique had become a hub for fashion lovers and trendsetters, with Aisha's designs gaining more attention by the day. But Madison's shadow loomed large. Though she hadn't made any overt moves since the trunk show, Aisha knew that her rival was biding her time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. It was like a storm on the horizon, building strength and waiting for the right moment to unleash its fury. One afternoon, as Aisha was finalizing some inventory orders, Lydia came rushing into the boutique, her face pale. Aisha, you need to see this, Lydia said breathlessly, holding out her phone. Aisha took the phone, her brow furrowing as she scanned the screen. It was a blog post from a popular local gossip site, and the headline made her blood run cold. Essence exposed, scandal rocks local boutique. The article was filled with accusations, claims that Essence's success was built on unethical practices, that Aisha had stolen designs from other creators, and that the boutique was on the verge of financial collapse. Aisha's hands shook as she scrolled through the article, her stomach churning with anger and disbelief. This was Madison's doing. It had her fingerprints all over it. Lydia looked at Aisha, her expression filled with concern. What are we going to do? Aisha took a deep breath, steadying herself. We're going to fight back. I'm not letting Madison win. As the storm began to gather once more, Aisha knew that this was just the beginning. But she was ready. The gossip article spread like wildfire. Within days, Aisha's phone was flooded with messages from concerned customers, designers, and even friends who had seen the post. It felt as though the world was closing in on her. Every time she glanced at her phone, another notification reminded her of Madison's latest attack, and the weight of it all pressed down on her like a suffocating blanket. Sitting in her office, Aisha stared at the article for what felt like the 100th time. She could see Madison's influence in every word, each lie carefully designed to ruin Essence's hard-earned reputation. The accusations were absurd. Aisha had never stolen designs, nor was her business anywhere near financial collapse, but rumors were powerful, and once they took root, they were difficult to shake. Lydia burst into the office, looking just as frantic as she had been since the article dropped. Aisha, we need to address this. People are talking, and we can't just ignore it. Some of the designers are getting nervous. If we don't act soon, they might pull out of the next show. Aisha rubbed her temples, feeling the pressure build behind her eyes. She knew Lydia was right, but the thought of responding to such baseless rumors filled her with dread. No matter what she said, people would talk. That was Madison's whole game. She knew how to manipulate perceptions, how to turn whispers into a scandal. We can't give Madison the satisfaction of a public meltdown, Aisha said, keeping her voice steady even though her hands were trembling. If we lash out, it'll just make us look guilty. We need to be strategic. Lydia frowned, pacing the small office. Strategic, yes, but what does that even look like right now? Madison's a step ahead of us. I mean, she's spreading lies we didn't even think to defend ourselves against because they're so ridiculous. Aisha took a deep breath. We focus on our strengths, on what Essence is all about. Integrity, creativity, community. We don't give her the power to control the narrative. Lydia nodded slowly, though her expression remained tense. Okay, but we need to get ahead of this somehow. Do you want to put out a statement? Aisha considered it for a moment. No, not yet. If we respond too quickly, it'll look like we're scrambling. Madison wants us to panic, and I refuse to play into that. We need to stay calm and act on our terms. Lydia sighed, clearly frustrated but trusting Aisha's judgment. All right, I'll keep things going in the front of the store. But just be careful, okay? Madison's out for blood, and I don't think she's done yet. As Lydia left the office, Aisha felt a pang of anxiety grip her chest. Madison wasn't done. Not by a long shot. But Aisha couldn't let that fear consume her. She had fought too hard to build Essence, and she wasn't about to let Madison tear it down with petty lies. Aisha's phone buzzed again, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a text from her lawyer, Miriam, someone Aisha had known for years and trusted deeply. Saw the article. We need to talk. Call me ASAP. Aisha immediately dialed Mariam's number, her heart racing as the phone rang. Mariam picked up on the second ring. Aisha, I'm glad you called. We need to strategize. This article is defamatory, and if you want, we can pursue legal action. Aisha leaned back in her chair, exhaling sharply. I don't know, Mariam. Do you think it'll help, or will it just make things worse? I understand your hesitation, Mariam said gently, but letting this kind of thing slide can be dangerous. If people believe these lies and they start to snowball, it could affect your business in the long run. Legal action sends a message that you're not going to tolerate this kind of slander. Aisha chewed her lip, considering her options. I don't want to look like I'm overreacting. Miriam's voice was firm. You're not overreacting, Aisha. You're protecting your business. We can send a cease and desist to the blog, demand they take the article down, and publicly apologize. That's the first step. If Madison's behind this, we can also pursue defamation against her directly. The idea of confronting Madison head-on filled Aisha with a strange mix of fear and determination. She had avoided escalating the situation up until now, hoping that Madison would lose interest and move on. But Madison wasn't going to stop, not unless Aisha made her. Let's start with the cease and desist, Aisha decided. I don't want to go after Madison unless we have concrete proof she's behind this. I need to stay focused on the boutique. Miriam agreed. I'll get it drafted and sent over to you for review. Hang in there, Aisha. You're stronger than this nonsense. Aisha thanked her and hung up, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. Madison might have the upper hand now, but Aisha wasn't backing down. She was going to fight for Essence, and she was going to do it on her terms. Over the next few days, Aisha worked tirelessly to repair the damage caused by the article. She focused on maintaining the boutique's reputation, continuing to promote the values that Essence stood for. Customers were still coming in, and while some were curious about the rumors, many were supportive and brushed off the article as nonsense. Lydia worked alongside her, keeping the energy in the store positive and upbeat, despite the tension in the air. Together, they prepared for the next big fashion event, determined to prove that Essence was stronger than the lies being spread about it. But Madison wasn't done. A week after the initial article, another post appeared on the same gossip site. This time, it was an interview with an anonymous source who claimed to have worked closely with Aisha and accused her of underpaying her employees and exploiting young designers. The lies were even more malicious than before, painting Aisha as a ruthless businesswoman who cared only about profits. Aisha read the article in stunned silence, her hands shaking as she scrolled through the cruel words. The accusations were baseless, but they were damaging, and worse, this time, people were starting to believe them. I can't believe this, Aisha muttered under her breath, her heart pounding in her chest. She's not going to stop until she destroys me. Lydia came over, looking horrified as she glanced at the article over Aisha's shoulder. This is getting out of control. We need to do something, Aisha. We can't just keep ignoring this. I know, Aisha said, her voice tight. But what? If we respond, it just keeps the story going, and if we don't, people will think it's true. Lydia sighed, running a hand through her hair. There's got to be a way to expose Madison. She can't get away with this. Aisha nodded slowly, her mind racing. She couldn't afford to lose more customers or designers. Madison's lies were threatening everything she had built, and Aisha knew that if she didn't act soon, it might be too late. Then a thought occurred to her. What if we don't fight her in the media? What if we use this as an opportunity to show people who we really are? Lydia frowned. What do you mean? Aisha's eyes lit up with determination. A community event, something that brings people together and showcases what Essence is really about. We invite the designers, the customers, the local press. We create our own story. Lydia's face brightened. That could work. It would shift the focus away from Madison's lies and put the spotlight back on you. Aisha smiled, feeling the weight lift from her shoulders for the first time in days. Exactly. We control the narrative, not her. And in the process, we show everyone what Madison is really trying to tear down. The plan was set. Aisha wasn't going to let Madison win. Not now, not ever. Aisha's mind was racing with ideas for the event. She wanted it to be more than just a typical fashion show. It needed to feel like a celebration of everything Essence stood for, a showcase of talent, diversity, and creativity. Madison had tried to twist the public's perception of her business, but this was Aisha's chance to turn the tables. She began contacting her network of designers and artists, asking them to contribute to the event. Many were more than happy to support her, excited about the opportunity to be part of something positive in the midst of all the negativity. Word quickly spread, and soon enough, local businesses and influencers reached out, offering their support. The event, Aisha realized, was turning into something far bigger than she had initially envisioned. Lydia was by her side, helping with every detail, from organizing the guest list to selecting the perfect venue. Aisha could feel the tide starting to turn, and though the rumors still lingered in the background, they no longer felt as suffocating. Madison's lies were losing their grip, and Essence was taking back control. "We're going to need some serious PR for this," Lydia said, jotting down notes as they brainstormed in the office. "I've already contacted a few local reporters. We'll have great media coverage, but we need something that makes this event stand out. A big hook." Aisha nodded. "I've been thinking about that. What if we use the event to announce a new collaboration? Something exclusive to Essence. We could partner with an up-and-coming designer or artist, someone fresh, someone who aligns with our values." Lydia's eyes lit up. "That's a great idea. It'll give the press something positive to talk about, and it'll show that Essence is still moving forward, no matter what people are saying." Aisha smiled, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. "Exactly. This event isn't just about damage control. It's about showing everyone what we stand for." The day of the event arrived, and Essence was buzzing with anticipation. The boutique had been transformed into a vibrant, stylish space, filled with racks of bold, innovative designs from local creators. Guests were already arriving, the atmosphere buzzing with excitement as photographers snapped pictures and reporters mingled with the crowd. Aisha stood at the center of it all, feeling a strange mix of nerves and pride. She had poured everything into this event, and now it was happening, a testament to her resilience. But despite the festive atmosphere, there was a tension in the air. Everyone knew about the rumors, and though Aisha had done everything she could to shift the narrative, she couldn't ignore the fact that some people were still whispering, still wondering if any of it was true. Aisha smoothed the front of her sleek black dress and took a deep breath. This was her moment to prove them wrong, not with words, but with action. As the crowd continued to grow, Aisha spotted Madison standing near the entrance, flanked by two of her friends, looking out of place among the stylish and diverse guests. Madison had clearly come to make an appearance, to flaunt her power. Aisha's heart skipped a beat at the sight of her, but she quickly collected herself. She couldn't let Madison's presence shake her. Lydia noticed her as well and sidled up beside Aisha, lowering her voice. "She's here. What do we do?" Aisha kept her eyes on Madison, who was casually surveying the event like she had any right to be there. "Nothing," Aisha said softly but firmly. "We're not going to give her the satisfaction of a scene." Lydia looked uneasy. "Are you sure? She's going to try something. I can feel it." Aisha nodded. "I'm sure. She wants to make me lose control, but I won't. She's just a guest like anyone else. She has no power here." Lydia exhaled sharply, still looking unconvinced, but trusting Aisha's judgment. "All right, but I'll keep an eye on her, just in case." As the evening went on, the event turned out to be a massive success. The fashion show was a hit, with each designer receiving enthusiastic applause from the crowd. Guests browsed the boutique, admiring the unique pieces on display, and several high-profile influencers were already posting about the event on social media. praising Essence for its innovative and inclusive approach to fashion. But despite the glowing atmosphere, Aisha couldn't fully relax. She knew Madison was lurking in the background, and the thought of what she might do next gnawed at her. Madison wasn't the type to sit back and watch. She was planning something. Aisha could feel it. As the night wore on, Aisha's suspicions were confirmed. She was in the middle of speaking with a group of designers when she saw Madison out of the corner of her eye, chatting with a well-known fashion blogger. The blogger was nodding along, clearly intrigued by whatever Madison was saying. Aisha's stomach dropped. She had seen that look before. It was the same look that preceded the first article. Madison was spreading more lies, right here at Aisha's own event. Aisha excused herself from the conversation and made her way across the room toward Madison, her heart pounding. She wasn't going to let this happen, not again. When she reached Madison, she forced a smile. "Madison, I didn't realize you'd be joining us tonight. I hope you're enjoying the event." Madison turned to face her, flashing a saccharine smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, Aisha, how could I miss it? This is quite the production you've put on. I was just telling our friend here about some of your recent business ventures. You know, the ones that haven't been going so well." The blogger looked between them, suddenly aware of the tension. Maybe I should." "No, stay," Madison said sweetly, not breaking eye contact with Aisha. "I'm sure Aisha wouldn't mind clearing up a few things for us. After all, you wouldn't want people to get the wrong idea, would you?" Aisha clenched her fists, fighting the urge to lash out. This was exactly what Madison wanted. A scene, a public confrontation that would only add fuel to the fire. But Aisha wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. Instead, she smiled calmly. "I'd be happy to answer any questions. In fact, why don't you join me for an interview with the press? I'm sure they'd love to hear more about Essence's growth and our plans for the future. We could even talk about your business ventures, Madison. How is it going with... what was it again? Oh, that's right. You don't actually own a business, do you?" Madison's smile faltered for just a second before she recovered. "I may not own a boutique, but I have plenty of influence, Aisha. You should know that by now." Aisha met her gaze, unflinching. "Influence is fleeting, Madison. Integrity lasts. Enjoy the event." With that, Aisha turned and walked away, leaving Madison standing there, seething but powerless. The blogger quickly excused herself and moved on to other guests, clearly uninterested in Madison's antics. Aisha's heart was still racing, but she felt a surge of pride. She had faced Madison head-on, and she hadn't let her win. The rest of the night went off without a hitch, and by the end of the event, it was clear that Essence had not only survived Madison's attacks, but had come out stronger. As the guests began to leave, Lydia approached Aisha with a grin. "You handled that perfectly. She didn't know what hit her." Aisha smiled, feeling the weight lift off her shoulders. "She's not worth my time. Essence speaks for itself." Lydia nodded, her eyes shining with admiration. "You're right. And tonight proved that. Madison may try to tear you down, but she can't destroy what you've built." Aisha looked around at the boutique, filled with the energy and creativity of everyone who had supported her. Essence was more than just a business. It was a community. And no matter what Madison did, she could never take that away. Madison left the event that night fuming. Aisha had humiliated her in front of everyone, and the worst part was, she had done it with such grace that Madison couldn't even retaliate. It was like fighting a ghost. Aisha's reputation was stronger than ever, while Madison's influence felt like it was slipping through her fingers. No one had believed her subtle rumors. No one cared about the lies she'd whispered to the fashion blogger or the people at the event. The drive home was silent. Madison's friends, who had once cheered her on in every petty scheme, were quiet in the back seat. They hadn't said much since Aisha's pointed remarks about integrity. It was clear to them that Madison had lost the upper hand, and the awkwardness in the car was suffocating. The next morning, Madison woke up with a fire in her belly. She wasn't finished, not by a long shot. If Aisha thought she could publicly shame her and walk away unscathed, she was sorely mistaken. Madison was going to ruin her, one way or another. She couldn't let it go. It wasn't just about the embarrassment anymore. It was about regaining her sense of control. Aisha had made her look like a fool, and now she was going to pay. Her phone buzzed, and Madison grabbed it, half expecting one of her friends to reach out with some words of comfort or solidarity. Instead, it was a text from her closest friend, Kara. "Kara, hey, I think we need to talk. Maybe grab coffee later?" Madison scowled. She could tell from the tone that Kara wasn't just looking for a casual chat. Her friends were turning on her. She could feel it. But instead of reaching out, Madison ignored the message. She wasn't interested in talking to anyone right now. She had other plans. Bigger plans. The days that followed saw Madison growing more and more obsessed with taking Aisha down. She spent hours on her phone, scrolling through Essence's social media, watching as Aisha's followers grew, and the store continued to gain attention for the event. People were talking about the new designers Aisha had showcased, praising Essence for its originality and inclusiveness. Aisha was winning, and Madison hated every second of it. She thought about what she could do to undermine her, to shake the foundation of Essence. The more she dwelled on it, the more she realized that simply spreading rumors wasn't going to work. Aisha had proven too resilient for that. Madison needed something bigger, something that would tarnish Essence in a way that couldn't be undone. She turned to the internet, looking for any piece of dirt she could find on Aisha. Madison was convinced that everyone had skeletons in their closet, and she was determined to find Aisha's. Hours turned into days, but there was nothing. No scandals, no secret debts, no hidden enemies. Aisha's life was annoyingly pristine. But Madison wasn't ready to give up just yet. Then an idea hit her. If she couldn't find any real dirt on Aisha, maybe she could manufacture some. Madison's plan began to take shape over the next week. She started calling in favors from the few contacts she had left in the local media. She planted stories, dropped anonymous tips, and hinted at things that simply weren't true. Little by little, she began to build a narrative, one that painted Aisha as a ruthless businesswoman who didn't care about her employees or the community. Madison used every bit of her influence to push the story into the public eye, hoping it would gain traction. At first, nothing happened. Essence kept thriving, and Aisha remained the picture of grace and success. But Madison was patient. She knew that all it took was one person to believe the lie, and then it would spread like wildfire. It started with a small blog post on a local gossip site, claiming that Essence had mistreated a former employee. The post was vague, with no real details, but it was enough to plant the seed of doubt. Madison watched with glee as the post was shared and commented on. People were starting to talk. It was working. She escalated from there, reaching out to more blogs, feeding them more lies. She claimed that Aisha had been cutting corners on her designs, using cheap materials, but charging premium prices. She said that Aisha was exploiting young, inexperienced designers, taking advantage of them to boost her own brand. Soon enough, the rumors were everywhere. People who had once sung Aisha's praises were starting to question her ethics. The buzz around Essence turned from admiration to suspicion. Madison was thrilled. Aisha could feel the shift almost immediately. It started with a few comments online, questions about the quality of her products, whispers about mistreated employees. At first, she brushed it off, thinking it was just a fluke. But soon the questions turned into accusations, and the rumors began to snowball. Customers started canceling orders. Designers who had once been eager to work with Essence were suddenly pulling out of deals. Aisha's inbox was flooded with angry messages, demanding answers to accusations she knew were false. Lydia was beside herself, working day and night to do damage control. "This is insane," she said one evening as they sat in the office, sifting through the latest round of emails. "Where are these rumors even coming from? None of it's true." Aisha leaned back in her chair, exhaustion written all over her face. "I don't know. It feels like someone's out to get me, but I can't prove it." Lydia shook her head in frustration. "We need to get ahead of this. Issue a statement. Make a public appearance. Something. We can't just let these lies spread." Aisha nodded slowly, but she couldn't shake the sinking feeling in her gut. Whoever was behind this wasn't going to stop. They wanted to destroy her, and it was working. Madison watched the chaos unfold with satisfaction. Essence's reputation was crumbling, just as she had planned. Aisha had no idea who was behind the rumors, and that made it even sweeter. Madison felt powerful again, like she was in control. She was sitting in a cafe one afternoon, scrolling through the latest articles about Essence when Kara walked in. Madison hadn't seen much of her friends since the event, but she hadn't given it much thought. They'd come around eventually. Kara spotted Madison and made her way over to the table, looking nervous. Madison greeted her with a smile, but Kara didn't return it. "Hey, Kara, what's up?" Kara sat down, fidgeting with her coffee cup. I need to talk to you." Madison's smile faltered. "Sure, what's going on?" Kara took a deep breath. "Look, Madison, I've been thinking a lot about what happened at the event and everything that's been going on since then, and I don't think I can keep being a part of this." Madison's brow furrowed. "What are you talking about?" Kara hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "I know what you're doing to Aisha. The rumors, the stories, it's all coming from you, isn't it?" Madison's heart skipped a beat, but she quickly recovered, her voice turning cold. "I don't know what you're talking about." Kara shook her head. "Yes, you do. And I can't be a part of it anymore. It's wrong, Madison. Aisha doesn't deserve this." Madison's eyes narrowed. "So you're taking her side now, after everything?" Kara looked down, her voice soft. "It's not about sides. It's about what's right. I'm sorry, but I'm done." Without another word, Kara stood up and left the cafe, leaving Madison sitting alone, her satisfaction turning to bitterness. Madison's grip on her world was slipping, and for the first time she felt truly alone. Madison sat in the cafe long after Kara had left, staring at her half-empty cup of coffee. For the first time since she'd started her campaign against Aisha, a sense of dread settled over her. The victory she had been savoring for days now tasted hollow. Her best friend had turned on her, and it wasn't just Kara. The rest of her social circle had grown distant as well. Madison's texts to the group chat went unanswered more often than not, and when they did respond, the replies were short and vague. She had pushed too far, and now her world was falling apart. But no matter how much guilt gnawed at her, she couldn't stop. Aisha's success felt like a thorn in her side, and as much as Madison wanted to regain control of her life, the idea of Aisha prevailing made her sick. Madison's obsession with Aisha had become like a drug, and she was hooked. When she finally left the cafe, she made a decision. If she was going down, she was taking Aisha with her. The next week was a whirlwind of sabotage. Madison doubled down on her efforts, determined to make Aisha's life a living nightmare. She created fake social media accounts to stir up controversy, spreading rumors that Essence was using unethical labor practices. She even went as far as leaving fake reviews online, accusing the store of selling counterfeit products. The backlash was swift. Customers were furious, and Essence's sales plummeted. Aisha, meanwhile, was drowning. No matter how hard she tried to fight back, the rumors were relentless. She held meetings with her staff, trying to boost morale, but it was clear that the damage was done. Designers were leaving, and suppliers were hesitating to work with Essence. It felt like everything she had built was slipping through her fingers, and no one knew how to stop it. One afternoon, Aisha stood in her office, staring at the numbers on her computer screen. Sales had dropped by 30% in the last month. She could see the panic in Lydia's eyes whenever they discussed the situation, though Lydia tried her best to hide it. The two women had been through a lot together, but this felt insurmountable. Lydia entered the office, her face drawn with exhaustion. "Aisha, we've got another batch of complaints on social media. People are saying we're exploiting our employees again. I don't know how much more of this we can handle." Aisha rubbed her temples. "We're being targeted. There's no way all of these accusations are coming out of nowhere. Someone's behind this." Lydia nodded. "I've been thinking the same thing. It feels too coordinated." "But who?" Aisha asked, frustration leaking into her voice. "Who would go through this much trouble just to tear us down?" Lydia was silent for a moment before speaking again, her voice low. "Have you considered the possibility that it might be Madison?" Aisha blinked. "Madison Pierce? You think she's behind this?" Lydia shrugged. "I don't know for sure, but think about it. Ever since that night at the event, things have gotten worse. You embarrassed her, and she's the kind of person who holds grudges." Aisha leaned back in her chair, the weight of the suggestion settling over her. "It's hard to believe she'd go this far, but it makes sense." Lydia crossed her arms. "I think it's worth looking into. If we can prove it's her, we can fight back." Aisha nodded, but inside, She felt a wave of sadness wash over her. As much as she didn't want to believe it, everything pointed to Madison. The woman who had walked into her store with entitlement and privilege was now hell-bent on destroying her, all because Aisha had dared to stand up for herself. Meanwhile, Madison's life continued to unravel. After Kara had cut ties with her, the rest of her friends had followed suit. She found herself alone at home, scrolling through social media, watching as her world shrank to the size of her phone screen. Madison's heart raced as she read the comments under the articles and posts she had helped to seed. People were calling Aisha out, questioning her ethics, her values, and her integrity. Madison should have been thrilled. This was what she wanted, wasn't it? Aisha's downfall. But the more she read, the more hollow it all felt. There was no joy in it anymore, only a sinking feeling that she had gone too far. She had isolated herself from everyone she once called a friend, and now she was watching from the sidelines as her life fell apart. She didn't care. At least, that's what she told herself. Aisha had to be taken down. That was the only thing that mattered now. One evening, Madison received an unexpected phone call from a blocked number. She hesitated before answering, but curiosity got the better of her. "Hello? Madison Pierce?" a voice asked on the other end. Madison's stomach tightened. "Yes, who is this?" There was a brief pause before the voice continued. "We're calling from the Fashion Ethics Review Board. We've received some disturbing allegations about your involvement in an online smear campaign against Essence and its owner, Aisha Green. We'd like to discuss these allegations with you." Madison's blood ran cold. How had they found out? "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, her voice trembling. The voice on the other end was firm. "Miss Pierce, we have substantial evidence linking you to the fake accounts and false accusations. If you refuse to cooperate, we will be forced to escalate this matter legally." Madison hung up the phone, her hands shaking. She couldn't believe it. Someone had uncovered her scheme, and now everything was about to come crashing down. Aisha sat at her desk, her phone buzzing beside her. She had been waiting for this call all day. It was her lawyer, confirming that they had found the source of the rumors. Madison Pierce had been behind everything. Aisha wasn't surprised. Disappointed, yes, but not surprised. She had seen people like Madison before, people who thought they were entitled to success and respect simply because of their privilege, people who couldn't stand to see others thrive. It was a sad reality, but one that Aisha had faced many times throughout her career. Now, though, she had proof. She could fight back. When she arrived at the meeting with her legal team the next day, Aisha was calm, composed. She knew that Madison had already lost. The lies were unraveling, and the truth was starting to surface. It was only a matter of time before Madison's reputation was in shambles, just as she had tried to do to Aisha. But Aisha wasn't interested in revenge. She didn't want to stoop to Madison's level. Instead, she made a decision. She would address the public, set the record straight, and then move forward with her head held high. The press conference was held at Essence a few days later. Aisha stood at the podium, the cameras flashing in front of her. Lydia stood by her side, offering silent support. The store was filled with reporters, customers, and designers who had come to hear Aisha's side of the story. When she began to speak, her voice was steady, her words clear. "I want to thank everyone for coming today," she said, her gaze sweeping over the crowd. "Over the past few weeks, my store and my character have been attacked by false accusations and malicious rumors. These accusations were designed to destroy my business and my reputation. However, the truth has come to light." She paused, allowing the weight of her words to sink in. It has been revealed that these attacks were orchestrated by Madison Pierce. While I am saddened by her actions, I refuse to let her bitterness and hatred define who I am or what Essence stands for. Aisha's words were met with murmurs of shock from the crowd, but she remained poised. Essence has always been about integrity, inclusiveness, and supporting those who are often overlooked in the fashion industry. We will continue to stand by those values, no matter who tries to tear us down. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. Aisha stepped back from the podium, feeling a sense of peace wash over her. She had fought back with grace, just as she had promised herself she would. Madison's scheme had failed, and she had lost everything. But Aisha had won, Not just the battle, but the respect of everyone who had witnessed her strength in the face of adversity. Madison, on the other hand, watched the press conference from her couch, her heart heavy with regret. The world she had tried to build through manipulation and lies had crumbled, and now she was left with nothing. She had lost her friends, her reputation, and her standing in the community. And for what? A petty attempt to take down someone who had done nothing but rise to the occasion. For the first time in a long time, Madison felt small, insignificant, and she had no one to blame but herself. Madison sat in her living room, staring at the blank television screen, the silence heavy around her. Her once vibrant social life had vanished, her phone now eerily quiet. The notifications that used to ping relentlessly, group messages, event invites, social updates, were now a distant memory. The few times her phone did light up, it was just spam emails or notifications of other people's successes. She had lost everything. Her friends, her social standing, and the respect she'd clung to so fiercely. All of it had slipped away, leaving her stranded in an ocean of her own making. Madison knew it was her fault, but admitting it felt like a defeat she wasn't ready to face. She flipped through social media, though she had no desire to see what was happening. There was Aisha's press conference, shared by dozens of people. The hashtags were still trending. Truth prevails, support essence, rise above. The comments under each post were overwhelmingly positive, praising Aisha for her grace under pressure. Some called her a role model, a symbol of strength. There were others too, comments that condemned Madison for what she had done, labeling her as a bitter, racist woman trying to tear down another's success. The words stung, each one like a dagger to her pride. But what hurt more was that they were true. For a brief moment, Madison considered sending an apology. She imagined typing it out, acknowledging her wrongdoings, offering a sincere explanation. But what could she possibly say? That she was jealous? That she had been consumed by her own insecurities and prejudices? None of that would undo the damage she had caused. Instead, she turned her phone off and sank deeper into the couch. She had hit rock bottom, and there was no one left to pull her out. Across town, Aisha was sitting in her office, reviewing the latest numbers from Essence. Things were starting to look up. The negative press had subsided, and loyal customers were returning, drawn back by the outpouring of support for the store. A few of the designers who had distanced themselves during the scandal had reached out, expressing their interest in collaborating again. It was a slow climb, but Aisha knew they would get back to where they had been. Lydia knocked on the door, peeking her head in. "Got a minute?" Aisha looked up, smiling. "Of course, come in." Lydia stepped inside, holding a folder of papers. "I've been going over everything with the legal team, and it looks like we're in the clear. Madison's smear campaign has been completely debunked. The lawyers think we can move forward with a defamation lawsuit, but I wanted to check with you first." Aisha sighed, leaning back in her chair. "Do you think it's worth it?" Lydia raised an eyebrow. "I think she deserves it. What she did was malicious, Aisha. She tried to ruin you." "I know." Aisha was quiet for a moment, staring at the paperwork. "But dragging this out in court? It feels like giving her more power over me. I don't want to keep fighting her." Lydia sat down across from her. "I get that, but we can't just let her walk away from this either. She needs to face consequences." Aisha nodded slowly, understanding Lydia's point. Madison had crossed so many lines, and there was no denying that she deserved to be held accountable. But at the same time, Aisha was tired of the drama, tired of the stress, and tired of letting Madison occupy space in her mind. "I'll think about it," Aisha said finally. "For now, I just want to focus on rebuilding." Lydia smiled. "Fair enough. I'll support whatever decision you make." As the days passed, Madison's situation continued to spiral. Word had spread fast about what she had done. She couldn't step outside without feeling the weight of people's judgmental stares. At the grocery store, she overheard whispers from the staff. At her favorite cafe, the barista barely acknowledged her as she ordered. Even in her own neighborhood, she felt like a pariah. The isolation was suffocating. Her family had caught wind of the situation too. Her mother, a woman who had always prided herself on maintaining appearances, called to berate her for making a fool of the family name. "I can't believe you, Madison," her mother had said, her voice cold with disappointment. What were you thinking? You've embarrassed us all." Madison had tried to explain, tried to justify her actions, but it was no use. Her mother didn't want to hear excuses. The call ended with a terse "fix this" before the line went dead. Fix this? How was she supposed to fix any of it? Madison sat on her bed, looking around her room. The expensive furniture, the designer clothes, none of it mattered now. All the wealth, all the status, it had meant nothing in the end. She was empty, hollowed out by her own hatred and jealousy. She thought about Aisha, about how effortless she had made success look. Even now, after everything Madison had done to her, Aisha had come out on top. Strong, composed, admired by all, Aisha had won. Madison hated it, hated that she was the one left in ruins while Aisha thrived. But deep down, Madison knew that Aisha's strength wasn't something that could be torn down with rumors or lies. It was rooted in something deeper, something Madison had never understood. It wasn't just about success, it was about character. Aisha sat in her living room that evening, sipping tea as the sun set outside. She felt lighter than she had in weeks. The storm had passed, and while there was still work to do, she knew that she, in essence, would come out stronger for it. She had weathered the worst of it, and in the process, she had learned something valuable. People like Madison, people who tried to tear others down out of spite and envy, couldn't win in the end. Not if you stayed true to who you were. Aisha had been tested, but she had never wavered from her values, and that, she realized, was what had saved her. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table. She picked it up, glancing at the screen. It was a text from Lydia. "You did it, boss. Proud of you." Aisha smiled, her heart full. She had done it. Not alone, of course. She had a team of people who believed in her, supported her every step of the way. But at the end of the day, it had been her strength, her integrity that had seen her through. And that, more than anything, was her victory. Madison sat in front of her vanity mirror, staring at her reflection. The person looking back at her seemed unfamiliar. Her face was drawn, her eyes tired. She looked defeated. In many ways she was. A knock at the door startled her. She wasn't expecting anyone. Reluctantly, she rose to answer it. When she opened the door, she was greeted by a man in a suit, holding an envelope. "Miss Pierce?" he asked. Madison nodded. "This is for you," the man said, handing her the envelope. She took it, her hands trembling slightly as she opened it. Inside was a formal letter from Aisha's lawyers, detailing the defamation case they were building against her. Madison's heart sank as she skimmed the contents. She was being sued. Her hands shook as she dropped the letter onto the table. This was it, the final blow. She sat down, numb. There was no way out of this. No more schemes, no more lies. Madison had lost everything, and now she was going to lose even more. Madison sat at her dining table, the letter from Aisha's lawyers in front of her, its words screaming louder than her own thoughts. She could barely process what it said, but the implications were clear. She was being sued for defamation, and with everything she had already lost, this felt like the final nail in the coffin. A heavy lump settled in her throat as she tried to swallow the reality of her situation. The last few months had been a slow, painful unraveling of her life, but this felt different. This wasn't just the loss of social status or the whispers behind her back. This was real, legally real. A courtroom battle was something she couldn't charm or manipulate her way out of. Her world had already been falling apart, but now the ground had disappeared entirely. She hadn't told anyone about the letter yet, not even her parents. The shame of admitting what she had done, how far she had sunk, it was unbearable. What would her mother think? Her father? They had always been so proud of her, the daughter who had made it in the big city, who had a life others envied. Now, that image had been shattered, and Madison had no one to blame but herself. The days since receiving the letter had been torturous. She stayed locked in her apartment, ignoring calls, avoiding social media. Her once thriving social circle had dwindled to nothing, leaving her in complete isolation. She had become a ghost of her former self, haunting the empty spaces of her life. What had started as jealousy had spiraled into something far more destructive than she had ever anticipated. She hadn't just tried to ruin Aisha. She had ruined herself in the process. The thought gnawed at her constantly, the weight of it crushing. Madison's phone vibrated, pulling her out of her thoughts. She glanced at the screen, her mother. For a moment she considered answering, but what could she say? There was no explaining this away. She let the call go to voicemail, burying her face in her hands as the phone fell silent again. On the other side of town, Aisha was preparing for another day at Essence. The store was buzzing with activity once more, the cloud of scandal lifted, and the customers returning. Each day brought more good news, new collaborations, returning clients, and an influx of support from all corners of the industry. Aisha had weathered the storm, and now she was stronger than ever. Lydia walked into the office, a stack of paperwork in her hands. "I've got the latest financials for you," she said, setting the papers on Aisha's desk. Aisha smiled, her heart lighter than it had been in months. "Thanks, Lydia. Things are really starting to turn around, aren't they?" "They are. We've had a 25% increase in sales since last month. The press around the lawsuit is definitely working in our favor." Lydia replied. Aisha nodded, flipping through the financial reports. The lawsuit was something she had been hesitant to pursue at first. She didn't want to prolong the drama with Madison, but after talking it over with her legal team and with Lydia's encouragement, she had realized that holding Madison accountable wasn't about revenge. It was about setting a precedent, about standing up for herself and for all the women who had been torn down by jealousy and pettiness. "This lawsuit," Aisha began, her voice thoughtful. "I didn't want to go through with it at first, but now I feel like it's the right thing to do." Lydia leaned against the doorframe, her arms crossed. "It is. She tried to destroy you, Aisha. She needs to face the consequences." "I know," Aisha said, her tone firm. "And she will." A knock on the office door interrupted their conversation. It was the store manager, Jessica, with a bright smile on her face. "Aisha, there's someone here who wants to speak with you. It's a designer, says she's interested in collaborating." Aisha exchanged a look with Lydia before nodding. "I'll be right there." As Jessica left the office, Aisha stood, smoothing out her blouse. She had gotten used to this, people coming back to her, wanting to work with Essence again after the dust had settled. It felt good, but she was careful not to let the success go to her head. She had seen how destructive ego could be, especially after watching Madison's downfall unfold. When Aisha walked into the showroom, she was greeted by a young woman in her mid-20s, dressed in a chic outfit that screamed up-and-coming designer. Her wide eyes and nervous smile told Aisha that this was probably her first major pitch. Aisha extended her hand with a warm smile. "Hi, I'm Aisha. Nice to meet you." The designer took her hand eagerly. "I'm Sarah," she said. "I've been following your store for a while, and I'd love to collaborate with you on a new collection I'm working on. It's inspired by strong women in history." Aisha's interest piqued. "That sounds incredible. I'd love to hear more about it." As Sarah began to describe her vision, Aisha listened intently, already imagining the pieces in her head. This was what she loved about her work, the creativity, the passion, the collaboration. It was a world Madison had tried to tear her away from, but Aisha had held on to it, and now it was paying off. Meanwhile, Madison was spiraling deeper into her own misery. She hadn't left her apartment in days, the walls closing in on her as each hour passed. The weight of the lawsuit was unbearable, but it was the loss of her friends, her social standing, and her sense of self that hurt the most. She hadn't realized how much of her identity had been tied to her status until it was gone. Without it, she felt like nothing. She had spent so long judging others, thinking she was superior because of her wealth and connections. But now none of that mattered. She was alone, and she had no one to blame but herself. The doorbell rang, and Madison frowned. She wasn't expecting anyone. Reluctantly, she made her way to the door, opening it to find a courier standing there with a package. "Delivery for Madison Pierce," the man said, holding out a clipboard for her to sign. Madison scribbled her signature, confused as she took the small package from him. She closed the door and walked back to the living room, setting the package down on the coffee table. It was from a boutique she had shopped at frequently, but she hadn't ordered anything recently. Curiosity piqued. She tore open the package, revealing a sleek black box with the boutique's logo embossed in gold. Inside was a card that read, "Thank you for your patronage. We hope you enjoy this exclusive gift from our new line." Madison scoffed. An exclusive gift? That seemed odd. She lifted the lid to find a small scarf, beautiful no doubt, but the gesture felt hollow. It was a reminder of a world she no longer belonged to, a world that had turned its back on her. She tossed the scarf onto the couch, unable to even muster the energy to care. This was her life now, empty, meaningless gestures from a past that no longer existed. As she sat back down, her phone buzzed again. Another message, this time from an old acquaintance she hadn't heard from in months. The message was brief. Heard about the lawsuit. Rough break. Madison stared at the message, feeling the walls close and even tighter. There was no escape from this. Everywhere she turned, she was reminded of her failure, of her mistakes, and of the woman who had ultimately triumphed over her. Madison Pierce had hit rock bottom. Her once vibrant social life had crumbled to dust. Her friends, or what she once called friends, no longer answered her calls. In fact, many of them had publicly distanced themselves after witnessing the fallout of her vendetta against Aisha Green. Her attempts to tarnish Aisha's business had not only failed, but had backfired in ways she could have never anticipated. The rumor mill churned with stories of Madison's underhanded actions, and the public outrage had grown to the point where it affected every aspect of her life. The lawsuit Aisha had filed against Madison for defamation was the final nail in the coffin. Madison had been so blinded by her need for revenge, so consumed by her bruised ego, that she hadn't stopped to think about the consequences. Now she faced not only financial ruin, but also the loss of her already fractured reputation. Her parents, furious and embarrassed, had stopped speaking to her. Her career prospects had vanished. Even the fashion world, the space she once thrived in, had turned its back on her. She was alone. The weight of her actions bore down on her like never before. For the first time, Madison had to sit with the consequences of her behavior. Sitting on the floor of her apartment, which was now filled with silence rather than the laughter of her so-called friends, she began to realize that she had caused her own downfall. The thought was suffocating. Meanwhile, across town, Aisha Green was thriving. Despite Madison's efforts to sabotage her store, Essence had become even more popular. Loyal customers stood by her, and the media buzz surrounding Madison's failed attempts had brought Essence even more attention. Sales had skyrocketed. But Aisha wasn't celebrating. Instead, she sat in her store one evening, gazing out the window as the last customer left. Her grandmother, Miss Clara, had come by to visit, as she often did when Aisha needed guidance. Miss Clara was a wise woman who had seen and lived through much worse than anything Aisha had faced. Her wisdom, steeped in years of overcoming prejudice and hardship, was invaluable to Aisha. Aisha sighed, sipping her tea. "I could win this lawsuit, Granny. I could take everything from her." Miss Clara looked at her granddaughter with soft, knowing eyes. "Winning ain't always about taking, baby. Sometimes winning is about knowing when to give." Aisha frowned. After everything she's done, she deserves to pay for it. "Oh, I don't doubt that. But what would it cost you to make her pay? You might win the battle, but lose something far more important, your peace, your heart." Aisha was quiet, absorbing her grandmother's words. Miss Clara had taught her from a young age about forgiveness, not for the sake of the other person, but for the sake of her own soul. It was a lesson Aisha had taken to heart, but now it felt more complicated. I don't want her to get away with it," Aisha whispered. Miss Clara leaned forward, placing a gentle hand on Aisha's. "She won't get away with it. Life has a way of settling scores better than we ever could. And from what I've heard, Madison's already facing her own consequences. You don't need to destroy her life, baby. She's doing that just fine on her own." Aisha sighed again, the weight of her decision hanging in the air. Could she really let it go? Could she truly forgive Madison after all the lies, the attempts to ruin everything she had built? And yet, deep down, she knew her grandmother was right. The lawsuit wasn't going to bring her the peace she needed. "I'll think about it, Granny," Aisha finally said, squeezing her grandmother's hand. Miss Clara smiled knowingly. "I raised you to be strong and kind, Aisha. Don't let her hate turn you bitter." A few days later, Madison found herself sitting in a cold, sterile courtroom. Her stomach churned as she looked at the empty seat across from her, the seat where Aisha would soon sit. Madison's heart pounded. The shame of her actions weighed heavily on her chest. She had tried to ruin a woman she hardly knew, all because she was embarrassed, because she couldn't handle her own fragile ego. The doors to the courtroom swung open, and Aisha walked in, her face calm, composed, and full of grace. Madison could barely look at her, the guilt gnawing at her insides. She felt so small, so insignificant in the presence of the woman she had wronged. How could she have been so foolish? The judge entered, and the proceedings began. The tension in the air was palpable, but just as things were about to escalate, Aisha did something no one expected. She stood, turning to face the judge, and spoke clearly. "Your Honor, I've decided to drop the lawsuit." Madison's eyes widened in shock. Her heart raced as the words sunk in. What? How could she? The judge raised an eyebrow. "Ms. Green, are you certain? You have a strong case here." "I'm sure," Aisha said with a calm resolve. "This lawsuit doesn't serve me anymore. I don't want to destroy her life. I believe she's already learned her lesson." Madison's jaw dropped and her body went cold. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. This woman, the woman she had tried to humiliate and ruin, was showing her mercy? It was too much. Tears welled up in her eyes, and before she could stop herself, she fell to her knees in the middle of the courtroom, sobbing. "I'm so sorry," Madison choked out between tears. "I don't deserve this. I was awful, and I know that now. I was a horrible person. But you're not. You're so much better than I'll ever be." The courtroom was silent as Madison's sobs filled the space. Aisha stood there, her expression soft but unmoved by the spectacle. She had already made her peace. There was nothing more to say. Madison cried harder, the weight of her remorse crushing her. Aisha's grace had shattered whatever defense Madison had left. In that moment, Madison wasn't just sorry because she had been caught or because her life was falling apart. She was sorry because she had finally seen herself for who she truly was, a person consumed by prejudice, jealousy, and insecurity. And now, in the face of Aisha's forgiveness, Madison felt a shift within her, a realization that went deeper than anything she had ever felt before. She had been wrong, not just about Aisha, but about everything. She had been living her life in a bubble of privilege and entitlement, and it had led her down a path of cruelty. But now she saw clearly, and she hated who she had been. Aisha looked at Madison with a quiet understanding. "It's not about deserving," she said softly. "It's about choosing to be better." With that, Aisha turned and walked out of the courtroom, leaving Madison kneeling on the floor, surrounded by her tears. But for the first time in a long time, Madison felt something she hadn't felt in years: hope. Months passed, and Madison worked tirelessly to rebuild her life. She attended therapy, volunteered at community centers, and started reading books about empathy, kindness, and prejudice. She didn't do it for show, and she didn't expect praise. Madison did it because she genuinely wanted to be better. She had also reached out to Aisha several times, not to grovel, but to thank her for the grace she had shown. Aisha, always gracious, had accepted her apology, though the two women weren't exactly friends. But over time, as Madison continued to show real growth, Aisha began to soften towards her. One day, Madison walked into Essence, not as a customer, but as someone seeking advice. She had an idea for a new business venture and wanted to support Aisha in growing the store. Aisha, seeing the sincerity in Madison's transformation, agreed to collaborate. They worked together on marketing strategies and expansion plans, and soon, Essence grew even more successful. Through their partnership, Aisha and Madison developed a respectful, if somewhat reserved, friendship. The past wasn't forgotten, but it was forgiven. And in that forgiveness, both women found strength and healing. In the end, Aisha's decision to show grace instead of seeking revenge had not only saved Madison from further ruin, but it also allowed both of them to rise above the hate and prejudice that had once divided them. The lesson was clear: forgiveness and love could defeat even the deepest-rooted hate. In choosing empathy over vengeance, Aisha had not only won the battle, but had triumphed in a much greater war, the war against prejudice and ignorance. And through that victory, she had helped to change a life for the better. As for Madison, she was no longer the woman who had walked into Essence that fateful day. She was stronger, kinder, and more aware of the world around her. Aisha's grace had given her a second chance, and Madison was determined to live up to it. Together, they proved that love, understanding, and forgiveness could indeed conquer hate. If you enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing to my channel. I put a lot of love and care into telling these important stories, and your support truly means the world to me. Thank you again, and I'll see you next time. Have a blessed day.